Down in Seoul, Korea is off to a busy start of the new year. Yesterday, a landmark inter-Korean dialogue took place, and today, South Korean leader Moon Jae-in held a New Year's media conference addressing a wide range of issues from North Korea's nuclear standstill to amending the nation's decades-old constitution. We will dissect his speech topic by topic with an expert for you in a bit. But first, let's bring in our Devin Whiting for the top stories at this hour. Devin?
Hi, Don. As you said, President Moon Jae-in addressed the nation on this Wednesday in his very first press conference for the new year. The 90-minute-long conversation between the president and the press addressed a wide range of issues, but getting the most attention, of course, was North Korea. Our chief Blue House correspondent, Moon Kan-young, reports.
South Korean President Moon Jae-in's first New Year's news conference before some 200 Korean and foreign press televised live across the nation. In a speech that allows the president to outline his government's agenda and national priorities for the rest of the year, the South Korean leader spent most of his time focusing on the nation's economic and social issues. Predictably, however, when the floor was turned over for questions, it was North Korea that took center stage as the president's presser came on the heels of a rare high-level face-to-face between the two Koreas.
남북 관계 개선과 북핵 문제 해결이 필요하다면 저는 정상회담을 필요해서 어떠한 만남도 열어두고 있습니다. 그러나 회담을 위한 회담이 목표일 수는 없습니다. 정상회담을 하려면 정상회담을 할 수 있는 여건이 조성돼야 되고 또 어느 정도의 성과가 담보돼야 할 것으로 생각합니다.
While describing Pyongyang's Olympic participation as very desirable and that he'll push for even more talks and cooperation with the North, Mr. Moon also made clear that his ultimate goal remains unblurred.
다시 한번 강조합니다. 한반도 비핵화는 평화를 향한 과정이자 목표입니다. 남북이 공동으로 선언한 한반도 비핵화가 결코 양보할 수 없는 우리의 기본 입장입니다.
The South Korean president had advocated for greater engagement with Pyongyang to reduce tensions, but as leader, he's had to walk a delicate line between the U.S. and North Korea. But on this Wednesday, quelling concerns that the latest overtures by North Korea would drive a wedge between Seoul and Washington, South Korea's commander-in-chief made clear that his government did not differ with the U.S. over how to respond to threats posed by Pyongyang. His warning, North Korea would face stronger sanctions if provocations continued or if it failed to show sincerity in resolving its nuclear issue. Moon Kan-young, Arirang News, the Blue House.
Meanwhile, North Korea has agreed to participate in next month's PyeongChang Winter Olympics, signaling a thaw in inter-Korean relations after Tuesday's high-level talks. And now that the two Koreas have reopened their communications channels, expectations are rising that they'll make some progress. Our Ji Myung-gil has more.
South and North Korea have agreed to hold further high-level talks, working-level talks, and military talks in the upcoming days. But the dates have not been set.
The reason why we did not fix a date for the talks is because we have the communication channel opened at Panmunjom. The dates for the upcoming talks will be set through further negotiations.
The two sides will hold working-level talks in order to have a North Korean delegation conduct an on-site survey of the Olympic facilities in PyeongChang prior to the arrival of the athletes. The exact dates of such visit will be fixed through exchanging documents. But Tuesday's talks weren't completely harmonious as North Korea's chief negotiator Lee Sun-kwon expressed strong discontent over South Korean claims to the media that denuclearization could be part of upcoming South-North military talks. Therefore, Seoul's unification ministry said denuclearization was a process towards peace on the Korean Peninsula.
We cannot make concessions over the South-North's joint declaration to achieve denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula. We are trying our best to peacefully resolve the North's nuclear issue.
The North chief negotiator Lee stressed during the talks that all the North's strategic weapons, including atomic and hydrogen bombs, ICBMs, and rockets, were entirely targeting the United States. He said Pyongyang is not targeting South Korea nor China or Russia. Seoul hopes to promptly resume dialogue on a peace settlement, which would include denuclearization. However, no headway was made toward organizing another round of reunifications for families separated during the Korean War, nor toward the possibility of reopening the shut-down Kaesong Industrial Complex. Kim Young-gyun, Arirang News.
North Korea has agreed to send a delegation of athletes, cheerleaders, and more to the upcoming Winter Olympics in PyeongChang. In fact, it looks like it'll be the biggest group the North has ever sent to the South. Park Ji-won has this report.
As the two Koreas agreed on Tuesday that the North will send a delegation of athletes, high-ranking officials, a cheering squad, and more to next month's PyeongChang Winter Olympics in South Korea, the focus now turns to who the North will send. A pairs figure skating team are almost certain to participate, but it's not yet clear how many other North Korean athletes will make the trip to the South. North Korea has sent delegations made up of hundreds of officials, athletes, and cheerleaders to South Korea on 3 different occasions: during the 2002 Asian Games in Busan, the 2003 Summer Universiade in Daegu, and the 2005 Asian Athletics Championships in Incheon. However, this will be the first time that North Korea will ever send a taekwondo demonstration team, prestigious national music bands, chorus members, reporters, and other visitors. The exact size of the delegation will be clarified during further rounds of working-level talks. The South Korean government expects the occasion to be a rare chance for inter-Korean cultural exchanges, and discussions are ongoing about the possibility of the two Koreas marching together at the opening ceremony of the PyeongChang Olympics. The two Koreas are also considering whether to host joint cultural events during the Games. North Korea didn't participate in the 1988 Seoul Summer Olympics, the only other Olympics hosted in South Korea. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
In other news, the World Bank has raised its growth forecast for the global economy this year to 3.1%. Along with its global projection, it also raised its growth outlook for the world's major economies, but says there's still a lot of uncertainty. Cha Sang-mi has more.
The World Bank on Tuesday projected the global economy to grow by 3.1% in 2018, with growth slowing down slightly in 2019 and 2020. The figure is 0.2% higher than the World Bank's forecast from last June. The institution attributed the rise to a recovery in investment and manufacturing and a continuation of trade. In its Global Economic Prospects report, the World Bank forecast this year to be the first that the world economy is operating at full capacity since the financial crisis a decade ago. The report wrote that the major economies, the United States, Eurozone, and Japan, are expected to see moderate growth of around 2.2% this year as central banks gradually remove their post-crisis stimulus measures. Growth in the emerging and developing economies will rise to 4.5% in 2018 with strong commodity exports. The institution said uncertainty around global growth prospects still remains high, despite the possibility of stronger than expected growth in large economies. The institution advised advanced economies to continue to reinforce financial regulations and supervision, and emerging and developing economies to strengthen policy frameworks to ensure financial stability. The World Bank publishes economic prospects reports every January and June. Cha Sang-mi, Arirang News.
This has been Devin Whiting with this hour's news headlines.
President Moon Jae-in held his first New Year's press conference this morning, laying out the government's goals and policies for 2018. During his speech, he laid out measures to keep his vows made across various sectors of the Korean society. But the president's ultimate goal boiled down to this. Take a look.
힘을 주었습니다. 이제 국가는 국민들에게 응답해야 합니다. 더 정의롭고, 더 평화롭고, 더 안전하고, 더 행복한 삶을 약속해야 합니다. 그것이 바로 나라다운 나라입니다. 2018년 새해 정부와 저의 목표는 국민들의 평범한 일상을 지키고 더 나아지게 만드는 것입니다. 국민의 뜻과 요구를 나침반으로 삼겠습니다. 국민들께서 삶의 변화를 체감할 수 있게 하겠습니다.
Now to dissect the president's speech topic by topic, we're joined by Dr. Kim Hyun-wook, professor at the Korea National Diplomatic Academy. Thank you so much, Dr. Kim, for joining us today. Now, during his speech, President Moon used the word life 21 times. What was your overall impression of today's speech?
Well, I think the important implication of the word is that during the Kindle revolution last year, what President Moon have received as significant questions from the people of South Korea was, is this a country? What is this country about? I mean, what's the role of the country? I mean, I think that is this fundamental agony that the president had for a lot of time, and I think he's trying to build up a true role of a state for the people and what this country has to do for the welfare and the life of the people of South Korea. And I think that's the general impression I've got from his speech. And I think that's the core of his message, that he's trying to achieve what his goal is about, which means to upgrade the level of life, level of South Korean peoples, and trying to lead the economy which is based upon the people of South Korea. Also trying to bring the weak people of South Korea to the fore and give them, I think, the utmost benefits of the states. All these things are, I think, the core messages that he has given by his message to people.
Now, the president has touched upon various issues, but I want to start off with the economy. He has made quite a few vows in the economic sector to ease the burden on ordinary citizens' lives. He mentioned about reducing the working hours as well as rooting out unfair practices at workplaces. And he, in order to realize that, he said, 특단의 대책, which translates into special measures in English, are needed. What kind of measures do you think are needed to keep those promises?
Before I give an answer to your question, I think this kinds of phenomenon is not only limited to South Korea, but it's a global phenomenon that I think has been one of the disadvantages and negative effect of globalization, which had made a lot of countries to be divided into poor and rich. I think the Korea is not an exception. I think the core level and core group of one country, of course, South Korea would be the case. To lead the economy of the country is the youth people, young people. And the young people, they work hard, they work damn hard, so many hours with very little, level of salary and wages. So there is wage disparities. And I think that is the fundamentals of the problems of the economy of South Korea. I mean, those young people working hard should be paid very well. And also the labor hours, working hours of those young people should be, kind of shrink to the normal level of, labors. And I think that is the core of his economic prosperity. I mean, he's trying to make young people to have more and more employment based upon a reasonable, working hours and reasonable wages, which would not have a wage disparity with rich level of South Korean people.
I couldn't agree more with you on that. He also promised a reform of Korea's biggest conglomerates. What kind of reform is he talking about? And do we expect a strong opposition from the nation's business leaders?
Conglomerates and business firms, I mean, we cannot deny their roles that have led the economy of South Korea, but also the negative aftermath is also very huge. I mean, think about it now after the Park Geun-hye, political undertaking the images of conglomerates and have been very negative. Now people ask people, what is the image of business conglomerates to you, and they all say all negative things. They don't say much about the leading economy of South Korea. So they all talk about reforms. So I think there is a positive role, but I think there's a negative role, and I think negative things should be definitely remedied for booming up the positive portions of conglomerates. And I think in that sense, the president focuses two things. I think the business operations of conglomerates should be very much transparent. I mean, a lot of owners have been operating the businesses very opaquely, which have made their wealth to be, expended illegally, which is no good for ordinary people. Ordinary people working for their companies work hard, but they don't get much benefited compared to the owners. The second thing is that the governance system, the business governance system and structures should be remedied so that it would not be illegally make the expansions of controls of the owners illegally and exponentially. So I think that two things would be the core of what the President Moon have suggested as ways to remedy and reform the conglomerates of South Korea.
Now moving on to inter-Korean relations, President Moon Jae-in was touted for restoring the inter-Korean dialogue that was severed for years. But many in and outside of Korea also pointed out that it will be a long road ahead from talks of figure skating to the tough talks of nuclear issue. Before we talk further, let's take a quick look at what the president had to say about this.
다시 한번 강조합니다. 한반도 비핵화는 평화를 향한 과정이자 목표입니다. 남북이 공동으로 선언한 한반도 비핵화가 결코 양보할 수 없는 우리의 기본 입장입니다. 한반도의 평화의
As we could see there, Dr. Kim, he put a great deal of emphasis on the need to denuclearize the Korean Peninsula. How soon do you think the two Koreas will be able to engage in serious nuclear talks? Because time is running out. Many experts say that North Korea is getting closer every day to nearing the completion of its dangerous nuclear weapon.
Yes, you're right. The capabilities of nuclear weapons of North Korea has been, I think they already have nuclear weapons, I think. The issue is whether they could complete their ICBM capabilities, which mingling with a nuclear warhead can reach the mainland US territory, which is a very serious threat to the United States. So I think that issue is something that we have to see and wait and see. But yeah, you're right that now the PyeongChang Winter Olympic Games is a very important critical, issues and junctures that can, give an important opportunity for North-South dialogue. But I think clearly North Korea wants to talk with the United States about the nuclear issues. I think they just want to focus on the Olympic issues. And by way of, talking about those, non-tricky issues, they want to bring the United States into a nuclear issues which is favorable to North Korea rather than to the United States. So I think a nuclear issue, I don't think would be seriously discussed between North and South Koreas. Maybe some other subsidiary issues, in addition to Olympic game issues, would be a reunion of separate families, or some other military dialogue to, lower the tensions in the Korean Peninsula. But I don't think the nuclear issues would be the main issues between North and South Korea.
What about the possibility of inter-Korean summit? Today, shortly after President's speech, a reporter asked the president on the possibility of inter-Korean relations, and President Moon has said that he's open for any kind of talks, including summit, as long as there is some sort of progress and achievement. What's your take on this?
Yeah, but the important portion is progress and achievement. I still remember that when President Moon visited Washington, D.C. for the first summit meeting with President Trump, in which he clearly mentioned that and agreed with President Trump that unless the denuclearization of North Korea issue is not on the right track, there would be no governmental level dialogue between North and South Koreas. Of course, the PyeongChang Olympic Game is an exception, but inter-Korean summit meeting is the utmost significant level of dialogue between two summits. And in order for that to be achieved, I think at least some portions of progress in denuclearizing North Korea is, I think, the prerequisite.
President Moon also reaffirmed the strong alliance between South Korea and the U.S. What does it imply?
I think the U.S. and South Korea alliance is a very important pillar for the security of South Korea. I mean, it has been a basis for South Korea's security vis-a-vis North Korea. And also it's an important diplomatic pillar for South Korea to deal with China, to deal with Japan, to deal with North Korea. So I think U.S.-South Korea alliance is something that we have to keep as a basis for our diplomacy. And the good thing for the current government is that President Moon is now pursuing North-South Korea relations and U.S.-South Korea alliance altogether simultaneously. I mean, previously, conservative or progressive governments only focused on either of these two things, but very much a balanced diplomacy of Moon Jae-in government is now pursuing these things together. So I think in that sense, he's trying to minimize the risks of any kinds of diplomatic loopholes that we can expect from any diplomatic relationship with any other kinds of countries. So I think he's balanced way of pursuing the relationship with the United States and with North Korea. I think it's very desirable portions of our diplomacy.
Now, constitutional amendment was also a key part of his speech today. Let's take a quick look back at what the president has said regarding this issue.
헌법은 국민의 삶을 담는 그릇입니다. 국가의 책임과 역할, 국민의 권리에 대한 우리 국민의 생각과 역량이 30년 전과는 크게 달라졌습니다. 30년이 지난 옛 헌법으로는 국민의 뜻을 따라갈 수 없습니다. 지방선거와 동시에 전 국민 투표를 하려면 남은 시간이 많지 않습니다. 국회가 책임 있게 나서 주시기를 거듭 요청합니다.
Now, Korea's two rival parties have clashed for quite some time over this issue of constitutional amendment. What are the major sticking points, and do you think the rival parties will be able to work out their differences in time for the local election, which is just a few months away now?
I think there are some clash points. Major 2 points. I think when to have the constitutional election to revise the constitution. The ruling party proposes that election to be, simultaneously held with the, this year's regional election. I think it's June. So that that case would kind of minimize the budget to hold the two elections at the same time rather than separately. But the opposition party argues that, maybe they're thinking that the regional election is not good for them. They expect to lose, in regional elections vis-a-vis the ruling party. Maybe that's the reason why they want to postpone the constitution's election at the end of this year, in which case they can get some more clout on that election rather than just holding it together with regional election. So that's the first clash point, when to have that election. The second one is what will be the major presidential system. The ruling party argues that there should be 4 years and 4 years reappointed presidents expanded into the entire period of 8 years of presidential period, which is pretty much the same as the U.S. presidential system. But I think the opposition party argues that there should be a dual government system, which is parliamentary and presidential altogether. So I think that those two things are the major clash points, and I think things will be, okay. They will try to negotiate with each other.
Okay, Dr. Kim, I have one last question for you. Now, to the dismay of many, President Moon today has reaffirmed the government's stance that there will be no scrapping or renegotiating of the 2015 Seoul-Tokyo Agreement on wartime sexual slavery. How do you think the current government should take this issue from this point on?
I think a very wise move first, because they are not breaking the negotiation, because that was the government-to-government agreement. But in content rather than in format, they're denying it. So I think it's a very wise move, in response to the Japanese response is very negative. Because even though South Korea is sticking to the format, it's completely denying the contents of the agreement. So Japanese are arguing that they can accept these kinds of proposals and bottom-up review outcome of South Korean government. So I think as time goes by, I think they will try to find some agreement, because South Korea at least gave more of leeway in the Japanese government's decisions. So I think the Japanese government will talk about it, and they will decide how to respond to the South Korean outcome. So I think that they will try to talk with each other how to come up with these issues, because they don't want to completely spoil and break the Japan-Korea relations. So I think I'm kind of hopeful about that.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Kim, for sharing your insights with us today.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of our show. Be sure to tune into Arirang News for more domestic and global news updates throughout the day.
On a cold ice track, you perform and showcase your best skill. The final moment where the result